So how do goji berries lower blood glucose levels? One way to explain it is to look at GLUT4, which is a protein that helps transport glucose from the outside of the cell into the cell. So how does GLUT4 work? Say you have a cell with an insulin receptor shown there on the cell membrane. Inside, we have a transport vesicle containing GLUT4. Outside the cell, we see a bunch of glucose. After eating a big meal, for example, we see an influx of insulin outside the cell. The insulin binds to the insulin receptor, causing a cascade to the transport vesicle containing GLUT4. The transport vesicle moves up to the cell surface and fuses with the cell membrane. The glucose can then move into the cell and participate in glycolysis, becoming energy. With glucose going into the cell and being converted to energy, there's lower concentration of glucose outside of the cell, which means lower blood glucose levels and less hyperglycemia. So what does any of this have to do with goji berries? Sao et al. Did a study looking at the impacts of LBPs, which are the polysaccharides found in goji berries, on the concentration of cell surface GLUT4 and blood glucose levels in mice. They set up 3 treatment groups. One group was the control, one group was mice with type 2 diabetes, and the third group was mice with type 2 diabetes who were also given LBPs. This experiment took place over the course of 3 weeks. In order to induce type 2 diabetes in mice, they were fed high-fat diets and 50 milligrams per kilograms of their body weight of streptozotocin. Streptozotocin is a toxin that damages the insulin-producing cells in pancreas of animals, meaning that the rats were no longer able to produce insulin, which mimics type 2 diabetes. The third treatment group had the same conditions as the second, however they were also given 10 milligrams per kilogram per day of LBPs. At this point, I would recommend that you pause the video and formulate your own hypotheses about what the outcomes of this experiment might be. So if we're looking at concentrations of GLUT4 in each of these treatment groups, which of these groups would you expect to see the highest concentrations of cell surface GLUT4? Which would you expect to see the lowest? By now, hopefully you formulated your own hypotheses, so let's see if you're right. The diabetes group saw the lowest concentration of GLUT4 on the surface of skeletal muscle cells. This makes sense because mice with diabetes have hyperglycemia because glucose isn't going into the cell as much as it is in the control mice without diabetes. The group with diabetes who were also treated with LBPs had the highest concentration of GLUT4 on the cell membranes. This results in lowered blood glucose levels because more glucose is going into the cell and undergoing glycolysis. So what can we conclude from this study? Well, mice with type 2 diabetes who were treated with LBP showed significantly higher concentrations of GLUT4 on the surface of skeletal muscle cells. This lowers blood glucose levels, which indicates the hypoglycemic effects of LBP and goji berries.